Kia ora. Welcome to this very special edition of the Last League podcast brought to you by Boys Get Paid. As always, Luke Kemmy's to my right and a very special guest to our left who I'll get to in a second. Just a bit of background about what we're doing here today, this afternoon. Well, through lockdown, pretty bleak times for New Zealand and abroad, obviously. We don't need to relitigate that, but the racing industry in particular was not immune. There was obviously shaky ground beforehand, and during it was very confusing about where the industry was heading and what was going to happen. But during that time, we held a lot of online gatherings. We caught up with many of the community and many industry stakeholders about what they would like to hear and what they want to know moving forward to keep this industry moving in a progressive and successful manner. A lot of that and a lot of what we heard came back to the politics of the racing industry and where the industry sits from a political setting at this time. Obviously, being election year, it's very poignant and there's a lot to discuss. So we thought, why not get our prospective racing ministers in front of the community, in front of the industry, to hear about what comes next and hear about the next 3 years, the next 3 decades, and the industry for years to come. Starting here today, we thought we may as well, and we should definitely hear from our current racing minister. His name is the Right Honourable Winston Peters, or Winston, I hope we can call you, or would you prefer Mr. Peters?
I've heard a lot of names called, so you can call me Winston if you like.
Winston, that sounds perfect for us. Now, we're here at Ellerslie today. This is kind of our adopted home of Boys Get Paid. Where would your home of racing be? I know you've got an affliction for up north.
Well, really, it's where you most enjoy racing. I've been to the Tauranga Club racing often. I've been to the South Island, I've been to Kumara, which I think is somewhat special. For everybody, it's where they first were introduced to racing. In fact, the first place I went to was a place called Kensington Park in Whangarei before they moved it to Ruakaka. So you can imagine what sort of a disaster that was, because it wasn't really quite appropriate. And then, of course, to Dargaville, which sadly is closed down. But I think, when you say special, well, I've been here quite a few times too. And this is quite special.
Well, you've obviously been involved in racing as the racing minister for a number of times. You've obviously got a deep affection with the racing industry. Where does that stem from?
Well, I love horses. And I think if you study the connection of humanity, womankind, mankind with horses, it goes back 10,000 years. It's a marvellous study, actually. It's actually huge. And that's why I say to some people when they talk about the racing industry or horses themselves, they should spend more time studying the history of horses and what an incredible connection it's had to the progress in humanity itself. Having said that, my father was a horse trainer, apart from being a farmer, from Clydesdales to Shetlands, wow. And so was his father, a horse trainer. So we were sort of amateur horse trainers where we'd get on and probably get bucked off more times than you've had hot dinners.
Yeah,
right?
Apprentice jockeys maybe.
That's right. And but lucky we were down at the beach, so when you put it into the soft sand, the horse's chance of bucking you off was seriously constrained by the fact that they're that far into the sand itself. That's when I first got interested in horse racing. But in politics, I watched over the years as this once great industry was declining and declining. And I was observing that most of my political colleagues coming to races like here, when everybody's dressed up and thinking everything's fantastic. They'd never been at 4 o'clock in the morning with it down to the yards and watching the shoveling and all the difficult work and the dangers of horse training and mixing with horses. So they, I suppose, got a perverse view of racing, and the consequences show in the neglect of racing, of sound racing policy. Well, it's just terrible.
I want to ask you a question then that's probably quite direct very early then. Is the racing minister portfolio, is that portfolio the one that is often forgotten in Parliament and that people don't want?
Yes, well, no, they take it up even though they don't know anything about horses. I mean, they wouldn't know the difference between a Clydesdale and a thoroughbred.
Because somebody has to do it.
Well, it's a bit like the Minister for Small Seeds.
Yeah.
Or something like that there. It's been a Cinderella portfolio. And yet, here's an industry that should be at, say, $2.6 billion to our GDP, or if it was equivalent of Ireland, $3.3 billion. Now you're cooking with gas, and also the exports as well. That's what neglect brings about, by decades of that sort of neglect. And I only took the job on way back in 2005 to 2008, and again, to prove that investment, and smart investment, is great for the economy, great for employment, and it's great for country people, in particular, the regions.
Do you, because through racing, people is whatever. If you ask somebody what they love about racing, often they'll say the people. There's stories and there's great characters in racing. And I know, and I'm sure you've made many a good friend throughout the years from standing at a track, but do you understand that those on the ground floor of racing, stakeholders, the everyday people have been disillusioned and frustrated by the leadership for a long time now, and it has kind of hit a boiling point in the last 6 months?
Yeah, I understand that, and I've said to them, why didn't you change your vote then? You're the master of your own destiny.
But they can't change who's running the TAB, for example.
Oh, yes, they can. Most definitely. We're changing it right now as we speak, aren't we? But they've got to change their vote. On election day and over the years, you've been the master of your own destiny. I mean...
So what you're saying is that people should have voted for you. Let's be clear.
Well, go out and find who's offering what.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, just don't go down and say, I'm going to buy a suit on APRO. I don't care what it looks like.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's going to... Stitching falls apart.
Well, it hasn't
fit.
fit.
Wear the stuff. Well, to be fair, they've allowed it to be Cinderella-ised when it should be a great industry. You imagine it was cooking at 3.2 billion like Ireland.
Yeah.
Now you're talking about one of the major industries, both internal, adding to GDP, and tripling the exports, which is all possible if you've got wise policy. And then you've got 58,000 people connected with employment. This is huge. So here we are in COVID-19 with a great chance of keeping this industry going, and with this, one of the certainties of employment when others are going to be going into unemployment because the industry won't survive, and people don't see what great opportunities they've got doing this. Now, I'm just a lucky guy that decided I'm going to go and prove my economic theories work by going to one industry and showing if I invest enough in here, I'll get it all back. And you wait till you start seeing the yearling sales in this country as the price goes back up and the taxman comes and gets his share, just how much the returns to the economy and the GDP will be. It's all there and it's all proven in Ireland, in Japan, dare I say it, in Hong Kong and Australia and other countries.
Well, should these stakeholders, right? They pour their hearts and souls and lives into this industry, and they probably feel somewhat that they're not in control of their destiny and somewhat trapped, and they're just watching it decline. How scared should people be about the fact that people in Parliament don't necessarily have the same care or desire to be involved with that portfolio?
Well, I can understand that because as a young person, I can recall, and it's 50 years ago now, a report by a guy called Thaddeus McCarthy, a judge, and he did a report on the racing industry, and everything he said was almost the same thing as Massara said when he did it 2 years ago.
Well, I could have saved some money, couldn't I?
48 years of wasting time. Well, we could have saved a lot of money, but that's what parochialism, a lack of monitoring and progress means, and worst of all, when you take your eye off the owner and the punter, those two people are sacrosanct in this industry, and if you don't care for them, you'll have nothing in the end.
So the owner and the punter, I mean, that's obviously dear to our hearts. A lot of people in the Boys Get Paid community obviously love a punt, but there's lots of people involved in ownership and syndication.
Yeah.
How important is punting to the industry? And then when you start looking at the way the TAB has been operating at subpar performance, both for the punter's experience and obviously for what the game's getting back. So where's the accountability there, and who needs to show the punter that they realise that there have been mistakes made and it hasn't been good enough?
Well, let's recap here. When I last became Minister of Racing in 2005, the casino taxation for the global figure of taxation on casinos was 4%. Racing, New Zealand owned 20%. And they've been putting up with that all those years. Well, I got rid of that for a start, got it down to 4%. And then, of course, we changed the adjustment rules so that you could keep a horse here, and when you left the country, then you had to pay tax, and we changed the depreciation on stallions and mares as well. But the fact of the matter is that on the question of TAB, when I got back in 2017 as the Minister of Racing, I was staggered to see that tens and tens of millions had been spent on the restructuring of the TAB, and we all know what the outcome was. This is amazing. It's phenomenal. And so we reconfigured the whole thing alongside the Massara report, and that's our next big movement forward. Now that the whole industry, with the two pieces of legislation, has been put in place, and we're off and running. That's going to be our number one priority post the election.
So, whose role is it? Like, I know if I spend more money than I have, eventually I get in trouble with my bank. Whose role is it to keep an eye on the spending of the TAB? Does that stop at the CEO, the board? Can the minister intervene and say, hey, at a high level, this is only going one way, which you identified early?
Well, whose role? In the end, you pick people to do the job, and we've gone out to ask for the very best, so that we've set a criteria by which the industry must go and find the best. Just doesn't find anybody this time. It must go and find people that step up to the mark, have got the capacity to do the job. But when push comes to shove, if you're going to have a microphone up your mouth like now, and you're asking what's wrong with the TAB, the minister's going to have to carry the can. And that's the last thing he wants to do, is not ensure that he's got the right people, making sure that here on in it's a success. And my message has always been, you no need to reinvent the wheel. Go and find somewhere where it's successful. Do the adaptations that are required and get going, because I know it's successful in Australia.
So how actively involved are you with that process then?
Well, I send letters downtown saying, how would you answer this question? Not me having to draft the letter.
No, but...
I'm sitting downtown and I say, no, I've got this guy complaining. You please tell me how you're going to answer this question.
And
why? Because you're the guy in charge, and I'm not going to soft sell this fellow. He's writing from someplace or Gore in some other part of the country. He wants to know. And my promise is that I'm going to find out why it's not working.
So, but we can say that the racing minister, the current racing minister, Winston Peters, has the faith that the people beneath him are the right people and the processes are there to make the right decision. So when stakeholders, when they lean up against the post and scratch their bum and get a bit feral about the state of the industry, you just say, look, I've done what I can, the process is there, we will make the right decision and the industry will move forward in the correct manner.
Yeah, well, I look forward to getting it all in place. We just got the law in place this year, and that took a whole lot of time. And with COVID-19, there was those delays. And in putting the $72.5 million recovery package in place, which we're going to get back as a country in the future, all that sort of delayed things. But you're right. I want the whole system to be running like a well-oiled machine and successful, like I see in other countries, and there's no reason why it can't be. We just have to ensure that the people we've got know what they're doing or know how to find the information to know what they should be doing.
So are you happy with the progress of the Masara report? Obviously frustrated by the slowdown due to COVID, etc.
I'm very frustrated during the COVID slowdown and very frustrated to have to go through the parliamentary process and that delay. However, the great thing about the parliamentary process in the end, that there was an overwhelming breakout of collaboration and cooperation at the very end.
That's good. That'd be something new. That'd be rare in this industry, wouldn't it?
It was extraordinarily rare. You asked the other side, McKelvey and anybody else, and we had an overwhelming breakout of love, affection and cooperation at the very end of the process. And that's pretty unique in this business.
Well, I've had to ask my dad for money a couple of times and he hasn't always given me the amount that I asked for. Can we be cheeky enough to ask what that process was like in terms of having to come to the fore to bail out effectively the TAB, and do they have now the right setup to be able to sustain that business?
Financially, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, if I'm looking down that microphone and anybody's observing this question, the answer is this. You go and try and find that sort of money from a Minister of Finance, get $72.5 million and get out of there with your hair intact.
Yeah.
You'd be a lucky guy.
I bet.
It's tough.
All right.
Yeah.
And that's look, you're obviously a politician with probably unparalleled experience. Winston, Luke and me find it hard enough to agree on what jackets we're going to wear. Ben wanted us to wear the orange ones, and we thought that we knew better. So anyway, obviously we know what squabbling's
like. One is wearing blue and the other one's wearing green.
Yeah.
I'm not too clear about that. I thought if we wore black and white, you maybe sort of focus on where we're going to go from.
Oh, let me throw you off.
We won't bring the greens into it. We don't need it to descend into chaos. Anyway, so moving forward then, because look, we've determined that the industry has been unstable. There's been all sorts of kind of conflictions and people not cooperating moving forward. One thing that we struggle with Boys Get Paid is we see ourselves as a group of young people that want to help the industry. We want to sustain the industry so that when we are, in an older generation, we have grandkids going to the track, they can enjoy the sport. We have never been approached, really, to ask for what would you say? Have we ever have you ever had anyone kind of come to you and say, what's wrong with the industry? Why is it like this?
No sort of requests for insights or maybe, some lessons from what we've seen. those sorts of things. So.
Well, does that seem surprising to you, or does that seem concerning that the next generation of racing seems to have been muted?
Well, it's actually an appalling discovery. It doesn't surprise me, but it wasn't what Massara did. Massara went widely around the country, and he also had come from a tremendous world-class record of reforming the industry in his own country, so he was coming from a proven record. But my concern when you say that is that one of the critical tools to marketing and the multi-dimensional capacity of racing going forward is, after all, young people. Mm-hmm. It's tomorrow's. They are tomorrow's everything. Farriers, strappers, saddle makers, riders, owners, trainers, are all
punters.
Young people. Punters, yes. And so it's a marketing matter here. And when you say that, you actually stagger me, because one of the reasons why we ensured on the Massara report that in every province, in every place, there would still be racecourses. Not 5 like in some places, but 1 at least, was that we know that if you got from Invercargill to the far north, we want to have a racehorse presence or racing presence to keep the interest of young people alive. And time, even when they move to the cities, they will have a starter in the countryside. It's a bit the reason why we kept Super Rugby, we got Super Rugby, we got the NPC. We made sure that the Tasmans and Northlands and the Manawatu stayed in the zone. And for racing, it's the same. You've got to keep racing going in the provinces. But the point is, if they're not looking at young people for their future, the question becomes, what on earth are they doing in terms of their marketing framework?
Well, look, I want to make it clear. It's not everybody and it's not all sorts of brands. Like Paul Wilcox, for example, here at Ellerslie. I mean, we're here at Ellerslie and we said, look, we've got the racing minister coming in. Can we have your chairman's suite? Drop of a hat, of course. There are so many examples like that of that. But I'm almost wondering from what can we do? How do we help? How do we take our knowledge and our database and our group of people? How do we make that? Because we don't want to sit on our hands, do we?
No, we'll be leaning against the rail before we know it.
Yeah, and we want to avoid that. So what do we do?
Look, there's some young old guys who are never going to be leaning against the rail because they keep on thinking what's going to happen next, right? But my point really is, I would be, and I can go to a lot of places in this country and I can almost walk in and take one look at the way it's being managed, and one look, and within 5 minutes I can tell you, I know that this is a successful club. Then I can walk on another one and I know it's on its last knees. You don't get a second chance to make a first impression, particularly on young people. If you want to get young people involved in racing, it's got to be a great experience. So when you get there, you can't be stupid old pies and a sausage and a piece of bread and butter on it. That's not what young people want.
No.
It's all these marketing. There's many phases of marketing. Besides which, I mean, I could take someone to the various bars in Auckland. I could have them join a loyalty club while at the bar. So there could be 10 bars in Auckland. The loyalty club goes to Racing Auckland. And when they're here, they get a special deal. Now you're starting to customise your business. Now you're trying to get new business. You're getting young people involved. That's where your future is now. I don't leave off and be the Minister of Racing, start the marketing side of it. But I know there's many aspects that you've got to be involved in.
Sounds like you need to roll your sleeves up and get onto the shop floor and start doing some of this yourself.
Yeah. Well,
excuse me.
a couple of questions. Let's touch on marketing to start with, because I want to know this personally. The announcement to help out the TAB and the entire racing industry a day before the budget was announced, that was a standalone announcement, right? Is that Winston Peters doing his marketing?
Yes.
Very smart.
Well, I didn't want to waste it. If it came out on racing on budget day, it'll get lost.
Yeah.
And I wanted all those racing people out there who've been saying a lot of cynical things to have to eat their words, if I could be nice to them, with a pleasant surprise.
Yeah.
Because they were saying, you got to do something, and I thought, I'm getting more and more brassed off this. Of course I want to do something. Give me a chance to get there. Give me a chance to quantify what's required, and give me a chance to do the impossible, go to the Minister of Finance and Treasury and get it. So that's why I made sure the day beforehand, at least I got to learn that we'd got there.
Very smart stroke of genius there. Well, we were obviously very aware it was going to be a racing announcement, but it seemed the commentary after from the general media, etc., were like, what just happened? That they didn't really know what was going on, because I guess they thought it was perhaps going to be some sort of other announcement. But
I didn't mind that because it went to you guys and you ran it properly. It went to the sort of general media, and there was, why did he do that when all these other people need this? And the answer is, because this is an industry that generates huge employment in the economy, and you're not paying attention as a metropolitan journalist. you're not seeing how important it is to the economy long term.
Enjoy that. I like that. And I think that's probably the problem with a lot of New Zealanders, right? Because I saw a lot of people in the tourism industry getting very upset about it straight away.
Yeah.
But then perhaps forgetting that a lot of the people that come here for the sales end up at their tourism businesses, passing on profit to them at their exorbitant fees that they charge. But
well, you can run the envy discourse and the envy factor on radio and TV and everything else. But my answer to them is, that's fine. Well, tourism's tremendous, but I'm not the Minister of Tourism. I'm the Minister of Racing.
Yeah.
And I know that at the Karaka sales in this year, next year in January, these people will be coming from all over the world to buy horses in their tens and tens of millions and possibly hundreds of millions that will be of great value to this for my country's economy. This is an economic investment that stacks up.
How close do you think New Zealand is on the premier scale of, say, a race night like Karaka Million or Derby Day? Kind of, if we can compare that to Japan and Ireland and Australia like you have, how close are we to providing premier product? Is it at the level it needs to be for the industry to reach its potential?
No, it's way short of that. And there are ways we can get to solve that. But if they're sort of what you might call A, we're on C, maybe C minus.
It's pretty frank, but I think I don't know. I don't know too many people would disagree. So practically, how do we change it?
But we want to change things. Stop kidding ourselves. Stop saying this is great. This race out here, Auckland Cup Day, was $250,000. It used to be $1 million plus, right? That's the least it can be. This is our biggest city. It happens to be in terms of local government, the biggest city in Australasia, and it's got a lousy $250,000 race, a $250,000 race. I mean, I'd be ashamed of myself. Well, I can get Otaki Mari to do 250 million, make it 250,000, and make it worthwhile. I can make it worthwhile commercially. I can make it worthwhile in racing. You got to think outside the square here.
But everybody knows that's easy to say, but literally, I don't know what Paul would say or the people that are trying to make this stuff happen. Obviously, the appeal of the industry has just got to a point where they're kind of hamstrung. It's like rock and hard place. So I don't know how do we actually achieve these things?
Well, I've already done it. I did it between 2005 and 2008. There were 10 over $1 million races. And the dogs, the number one dogs race was 200,000.
Okay, so the blueprint's there.
The blueprint is there. You've got to do something. You've got to go out and get some sponsorship. Share the sponsorship. Pack the place out. Do something, right? And, I go to Australia and I go to Randwick, or I go to Hong Kong, or I go to Singapore, or Ireland, UK. I can't get into the place. And guess who's the biggest people trying to get through or getting locked out there? It's young people, because they haven't had long enough lineage involved to get membership. But you see tens of thousands of young people can't get in. I don't see them not getting into New Zealand because we're not promoting it in the right way. And you've got to promote it a long way out. Be part of the diary.
Okay.
Be part of the planning. Now, I don't want to knock the promoters. What I'm saying is the evidence says you're not doing well enough. So pick your game up.
Okay, well, let's touch on that, because the way I look at it is Lotto, right? Their product is still exceptional. They're turning over $1 billion. And it's commonplace that people buy a lotto ticket in New Zealand and it jackpots, and we're happy to talk about that, and you're not a degenerate gambler. But if we look at the product of gambling at a casino level, still people are happy with that. If we get into sport and racing, people are flooding to bet offshore, in my opinion, because therefore the product is not good enough that we have here. So to stem that, we're going to either have to fix the product or ban people from going offshore, right?
Yeah, do both.
You do both?
Fix the product first.
So if we do that, though, my concern is that, well, I have a number of concerns with that, but for me, I feel like the marketing spend is pushed towards sport and not to racing. Therefore, we can't attract people into racing if the people that are leading our product and those offerings don't actually understand racing themselves to be able to get people betting on it and growing the sport through punting. And we see untold examples where sports bodies are worked with to encourage people in their database to bet on their sport, and I won't name them, but you could throw a ball around or you could hit one with a club. So how come we can't convince these people that are leading our product that needs to happen for racing? We need more exciting ways to get people having a bet on racing and just getting into it and going, hey, either, yep, this is for me, I like it, or no, I'm going to stick to my sports stuff.
But you shouldn't have to convince them. What you're telling me is that these people are not fit to make the judgment. They don't understand, and they don't. I mean, I knew in the COVID break internationally, the biggest gambling rise was in table tennis because you got natural separation. You got the 2 meters at the end of the table.
Yeah.
And we saw a huge spike when the Minister of Internal Affairs, Tracy and Martin and I were watching this and thinking, look at that, that's a phenomenon. So, all these possibilities were there, so to speak. But the idea that we're going to put on racing in this country for some guy offshore to do a Dick Turpin or be a bandit on our country, I've seen that happening out of Tasmania. When there was a raging argument between racing ministers all around the states of Australia against a Tasmanian guy who was mounting this attack from outside Australia's mainland, so to speak, out of Tasmania, and I saw the hatred going on then. So we need in this country to do the same. I'm referring to a long time back, but we need to do the same here. Protect our industry, get the max out of it, and also say to the sporting industries, well, with the greatest respect, what are you doing about this industry that is the mainstay of any assistance you get financially?
Yep. Yeah, a lot of people
Stop running around and saying, we don't want this and this and this, but we want that.
Yeah.
My discussion with you, and I said it to members of Parliament at the time in the last year, was, so what are you contributing to the bigger outcome in the long term? And then when it comes to problem gambling, what are you contributing to that?
Yeah.
So is racing not being a priority at the TAB or any kind of relevant notion of that? I mean, it's a sweeping statement, but that would just be flat out unacceptable, wouldn't it?
Well, it's not going to be the priority. It's not going to be the order of the day now. Racing will be the priority because it is the mainstay of the TAB. These are fundamental facts.
Yeah, I guess we just want to see that. I guess we just want to see the evidence of that.
Yeah, for sure. I think the risk of we could have banned offshore gambling a long time ago, right? Like, couldn't we?
Yeah.
That was probably the solution. We probably got to the solution too late, given we let the product deteriorate and be so average that people spit up.
Yeah. Well, it's the consequences of lost opportunity.
Yeah.
And this country's done a lot of that over the last decades. We should be the number one infant formula exporters in the world. We grow milk cheaper than anybody else with the best grass in the world. Some other countries got control of it now. Our biggest red meat industry company in this country is owned offshore. How many times do you have to make this silly mistake before you realise, get control of your product, be jealous as jealous as you possibly can, follow the Irish. Look how jealous they are about their product. And they haven't got it wrong.
So you've said it before. You want to make you want to make the TAB the only place we can bet in New Zealand.
Well, when it comes to that sort of betting, yes.
Yep.
I mean, I can't stop them around the back of the pub and they're playing two up against the wall. But when it comes to law and official policy, I can certainly stop that.
Sure. Okay, and we have spoken about it, and you've kind of answered it with the things you've spoken about previously. I mean, we have to fix the product before we can do anything, and if, unfortunately, the product's not good enough from a punter's perspective.
Well, I know. I get all these people writing to me.
Yes.
And I get more and more.
Well, and that's good. I like to hear that.
Well, if you can't go online and join something with the greatest of speed that is user-friendly, because that's the name of the game, that guy wants to have a bet. He's not a problem gambler. He might like a flood of $35, but if he's not going to get through, down he goes. Yeah. And I've seen the most unusual circumstance. People that never bet, meeting at the beach, and all of a sudden they say, we know there's a horse running at so-and-so place, why don't we have a go? Then they go online, and these people are all IT savvy, and they hit the wall. This is not satisfactory.
No. So is there any possibility that the New Zealand TAB could partner with an offshore bookie?
Again, but I don't know what the outcome of this is going to be. What I'm saying is we need an outcome that is primarily and principally as its objective to grow the New Zealand racing industry.
Okay.
And as fast as possible. In fact, you've got to ask, why hasn't it been done a long time ago?
Anything else from you? Heavy hitting? Otherwise, I'll be keen to rip through some quickfire stuff and
let's go to the quickfire, mate.
Because it's a busy time for any politician, especially a leader of a party who's. They say some people say pretty nasty things about you out there, Winston. About you're not going to be back, but
no,
that's
they've been saying for 27 years.
Yeah, I
stop that. They're never back.
Yeah, there we go. So we'll let the proof's always in the pudding, isn't it?
I'd give up if you kept on saying, Far Lap can't win the race.
Yeah. Hey, I do have one last question, actually.
Go for it.
These tracks that we're investing in around the country, these synthetic tracks.
Purnie,
Yeah.
Pickerton, and
We went for a look at Cambridge the other day.
Yes.
Grouse, yeah. Are they going to be long-term solutions, or are they small to medium time frame?
they're long-term solutions.
So they'll be there in 100 years.
Well, they should be if they maintain, and the idea was, I mean, we had 35 cancellations in this part of the world,
Yeah.
and if you know the cancellation's coming, and you can tell by the weather 24 hours out, you can relocate to there and hold the races. 35 races in the worst year not being held is terribly damaging to the TAB and to the whole industry. So that's why we're doing it. And guess what? The racing industry didn't have to put the money up. The Provincial Growth Fund did.
Yeah.
3 courses. And here's the point. No one ever thought that would be possible, but it's to grow the industry and it's to grow the areas like Awapuni and that central North Island, and also the Waikato, where you've got huge racing interests, and dare I say, the biggest part of the South Island.
Okay, well, I guess we'll hope that. I mean, it'll be a charitable disservice for the Provincial Growth Fund if these aren't there for decades and decades to come.
Well, you know, the thing is to get you the structure that can be successful, and the long-term maintenance should be able to be handled by the industry.
Yep. No, absolutely. All right, well, let's start to speed it up and wrap it up. Favourite horse?
My favourite horse?
Not the one on your front lawn up north either. Oh, it could be.
No, my favourite horse was, when I was very, very young, I was listening to a race in the Melbourne Cup called, and this horse called Rising Fast was running. A brilliant horse. And next year, it got cheated out of the race by a horse called Toparo, otherwise it would have won twice in a row.
There you go.
But on the way through, it won everything. The Cox Plate, this won 9 races on the road, and the Melbourne Cup.
Really?
Not many horses can do that.
No.
I have to research this one.
Rising Fast.
Sounds like you backed it the year after too.
No, I was sitting around the primary school, and somebody got the darn phone on, a radio on, in the school radio, while the teacher wasn't listening, and we were all listening to it.
That's how it should be.
Memories.
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, we heard a story of a school, a tip from within Boys Get Paid, actually, where recently the teacher stopped the class to watch the race and taught them about a little bit of economics and a bit about how numbers work and whatnot, and used racing.
Well, it's brilliant teaching that.
That's right.
You're showing a young child exactly how things work.
Yeah.
And a lot of education, as you know, is a disconnect between what they're saying and what the kid's understanding.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have a bet?
Oh, now and again I do. Not often. When I go to races, I don't have a bet much at all because you don't get enough time to actually focus on what the horse is. Everybody's in your ear.
What are they chewing your ear about?
About everything. So you're trying to think, this is number 5, I know there's a good one here. So you don't get to actually do it.
Yeah.
You know? But I probably have had my most fascinating bets on when I've been offshore or somewhere. And, I've...
On your Ladbrokes account?
Well, the last year I was up in the UK and bet on the Grand National.
Oh, yeah.
And Tiger Roll was the horse, number 10. And I thought, that horse is not too old, and that one's going to make it. Well, he hosed in, and he hosed in this year as well.
Here we go. I feel like we need to guess tips to. We might have to give you some time to do the form.
And one time my brother rang me to say, look, this horse is coming out of Canberra and it's racing at Randwick and it's not there for a joke. And I thought, well, he's quite right. It's probably not there for a joke. So I thought I'd plant some serious money on it. And the damn thing came in playing about 35 to 1. That's not bad, right?
Really good.
So I went up to the local TAB in Ponsonby and they didn't have enough money to pay me out. I don't bet you.
Well, that's the story. I don't think I've
never had that.
No, there's a long way to go. All right. I don't know. Do you have anything else you want to get out there?
Well, one thing that was asked a number of times, and I think it's one of the
very good point.
key concerns within the industry, is the loss of trackside radio. And I don't know whose responsibility that becomes, but a lot of people asking, if you were the racing minister again, would you somehow try to work to have trackside radio come back, or is that the responsibility of the TAB to figure out how they are going to fund that themselves and make it sustainable?
Look, the minister's job is to fix the legislative structure to ensure that the best in the industry are brought in to control and manage the future of racing. It's for them to decide that.
Okay.
I mean, you don't want ministers interfering in what they don't know.
Plus, you're much more of a fan of progressive style media like this. I mean, apart from the headphone situation, we'll have to work on that.
The headphones work like a charm. It just shows you that you don't have to shove the thing around your ear. Look like a gollywog.
yeah.
Innovation.
Well, fair enough. Anyway, so we're gonna do our best to launch a couple of online radio shows, as we've talked about lots, Saturday morning and Sunday morning. So maybe sometime if you're in the car, you'll be able to stick on your app and have a listen to us and maybe get a tip, and you might be able to scheme the Ponsonby TAB out of their locker anyway.
Another $31 shot.
I don't know how the radio, the racing radio sort of went. But let's
broke, I think.
Okay, but then everything else was broke as well.
It's true.
So if everything's not broke, why don't we to see how much money is required and whether it's a good idea? Because if you've got to go to an app and all those sort of things, well, that's fantastic. But just hitting the radio on your car is so much more convenient.
Oh, look,
is that impossible?
It's costly.
It's funny for us because we're just about to launch Radio's channel on the app. So while I understand what you're saying, I don't want to explicitly agree. I mean, look, if someone wanted to shout us a radio frequency, we'd happily do it so you could just tune in your car.
You know that venal self-interest is never a reason to stop a good idea.
That's right.
All right, here we go. Now, this has been awesome.
One question about the younger people that we want to ask everybody that does come on here. So, obviously we have a large audience of younger people that are involved with Boys Get Paid, and some of them are also looking to go deeper into the industry and even jump out of maybe the industry that they're in and have a bit of a play. How could these young people, with the current state of the industry, how could they argue to themselves that they should invest their time and efforts into this industry?
Well, in a way, it'll depend, and most unusual people will be attracted. It depends on whether you like horses or not, whether you like the industry or not, and it includes the dog industry as well, and the greyhounds. It depends whether you've really got enough love and affection for them, but the most unusual people from the most unusual backgrounds would love to be involved with horses if they could, and what usually happens is, what was their first experience like? So if you can make their first experience a great experience, they possibly like boating and yachting and everything. They'll love it for life. But if you're tipped out of a yacht in your first experience, you're not going to be very keen to get back in again. And if you're tipped off on a horse on a metal road, you're not going to be too keen to get back in again. So the critical thing is to make sure the introduction to taking people to the confidence level is what it is. But I still think there are an enormous number of young people, particularly young women, who would love the industry if they even got a chance to be part of it.
Yep. No, well said. I think we can leave it on that note. So as I said at the top, this has been the first of our series we're going to do with any one of the future of our racing ministers. Our current racing minister is the Deputy Prime Minister, the leader of New Zealand First, Winston Peters, has been good enough to join us today in the first of our series. And you do have a busy day. You've got more appointments. Hopefully they can sort you out some radio mics. And we will be back again. I was speaking to Jamie Richards later on today, if you're watching this live. So I've pre-recorded a chat with Jamie Richards about Melody Bell, how she's placed for resumption to racing in the Missile Stakes, and then you'll see us next week again. But thank you so much for watching. Thanks again to Winston. Cheers to Luke. Thank you to Ben. Ta-da.